Good morning, friends. From second week of April, you all know we have been conducting this Lex Webinar Series. In the lockdown period, we thought of entertaining advocates by engaging them in legal matters so that they don't become sluggish or out of touch of the subject. And with the help of Justice Anand Venkatesh, followed by Justice G.R. Swaminathan, Justice Nagamuthu, and a lot other judges, this Lex Webinar Series has become is an area of or a platform for continuous learning process. And in the month of July, we have decided to commence the session or continue the session with the help of leading advocates in Madurai bench. Today we have Prabhu Rajadurai. For some of our advocates, I think to give an introduction is like carrying coal to the new castle. Prabhu is a known advocate both at Madurai bench and Madras High Court, and his caliber is known to everybody. He is a man who can practice in all sides of branches of law, and he is one of the able advocates, and is an expert in motor vehicles act also, besides other subject. So he was my classmate, did his 5 years law course at Madurai Law College between 1983 to 88 and enrolled in 1989. For some time he was in Bombay High Court and returned to Chennai. So he has got a kind of semblance of both side practice of Madras High Court as well as trial court appearances and as well as Bombay High Court. He is not shying away from appearing in trial courts. His appearance in trial court is also quite famous one. With this brief introduction, may I now welcome Mr. Prabhu Rajadurai for the webinar. Prabhu, you are welcome. The forum is yours.
Thank you, Srinivasan. Good morning to all of you. Mr. Srinivasan, being my friend, sports from encomium, so I do not know whether I deserve to that extent. But anyway, myself, Srinivas Raghavan, Mr. Ajmal Khan, Rajadurai, we were all classmates in the law college. We also take pride that we were the first batch of 5-year law course. And when I got myself enrolled in the year 1988, the year was almost coming to a close. And then I started my practice on the first day of December 88. And soon thereafter, Mr. Srinivasan followed. So we all enrolled ourselves either in 88 or 89. I would also say that 88 and 89 is a watershed in the civil litigations, particularly in Mofasal bar. I would not say that it is because of our entry into the bar, because there are some important changes that have taken place in law, because I can point out very few actually which in fact change the course of many the practitioners. You all know about the Tamil Nadu Amendment in Indian Succession Act, where the women were made equal to the men as far as co-person is concerned. And second, so many litigations changed course, and so many new litigations came, and interpretations, everything happened. Then Binami Abolition Act, that also brought put an end to the plea of Binami, because you all know that in many civil litigations, Binami would be put forward either as a defense or as a tool to establish a right. Binami Abolition Act put an end to, and that also changed the course of many litigations. And some important judgments came in Rent Control Act, either in the PR and Sons case about and also in respect of what could be the willful default if the person already paid the entire rent. So that also, so many litigations, it changed the course of so many litigations. Then came the amendment in the Negotiable Instruments Act, bringing the dishonoring of check within a criminal liability. So that you know that the rest is the history, because several practitioners have taken a new practice in the magistrate courts, particularly in dishonor, regarding the matters regarding dishonor of check. Because I would always recollect when I read it in the newspaper, I drafted a complaint for my client and went to the SP to asking him to register an FIR at that time, because in Mufasal bar, you know, we would not get the luxury of books. And at that time, there was no internet, nothing. Now, by the click of the mouse, we can even come to know about the proposed bills, and also and all amendments, government orders. So then, and two important changes have taken place, I must point out, that are relevant today. One is the introduction of the Consumer Protection Act, because that was also in 89, I think. because we were all raw juniors at that time. We were so happy to appear in matters, particularly consumer, because we thought it a very easy practice. Actually, in fact, my first case was against the postal department in respect of, since they overcharged my client by 2 rupees. That was the first case before the consumer court. At that time, we used to appear before the consumer court even without our regular coat and gown, because even judges would sit without the attire. That is consumer court, and that because where in the consumer court there was no evidence and all, it was not there, so we found it very easy to agitate matters. And seniors were shying away from such, because since it was very new to them, and they looked it upon with kind of a contempt, the consumer litigations. Mostly the briefs came to the juniors only. Then the important change, that is the subject matter of our present discussion, is the new Motor Vehicle Act. Till then, you all know that a old Motor Vehicle Act was there of 1939. In 88, a new Motor Vehicle Act came, which brought some sea changes in the motor accident claims, particularly in accident claims. The most important change is the giving up of limitation. Previously, there was a limitation as far as the motor accident claims are concerned. Then in 1918, an act gave up the limitation. Limitation was completely taken away in 1988 Act. And secondly, the unlimited liability. Unlimited liability as far as the insurance companies are concerned. Once the insurance is taken for the third party liability, we all know now that the liability of the insurance company as far as the personal injuries as well as the deaths are concerned, it is an unlimited liability. But previously, insurance company could limit their liability to the extent provided in that act. As far as I remember, for passenger buses, it was only 15,000 rupees per passenger. So insurance company liability would be limited to only 15,000 rupees, and the rest one has to proceed against the owner. So in those days, I find many advocates, because prior to the coming into force of the 1988 Act, many advocates would choose to proceed against the state transport corporation. At that time, either it was Kattaboman, Thiruvalluvar, Nesamani and all. Because as against the insurance company, it was a headache. First, there is with reference to liability, because there would always be some violations of the policy. And in those days, courts were also very strict in interpreting the law. And secondly, the limit of liability of the insurance company. It would be very difficult to get the compensation from the owner. So 1988 Act brought a sea change in bringing in the unlimited liability. And the last but not the least is the procedure that would be adopted by the courts. Previously, under the 1939 Act, if you take, even if the claim is above 2,000 rupees, at the choice of the claimant, the tribunal can transfer the matter to the regular civil court to be agitated as if it is a regular civil suit. So after but however, in 1988 Act, under section 169, you all know that the tribunal has to conduct the trial as if in a summary manner. It is what it says. It not even it is stated as a summary trial. It is a summary. The tribunal at its own option can adopt a summary procedure or subject to any rules that may be framed. So this is the procedure. A new procedure has been introduced by virtue of the 1988 Act. A summary procedure. The tribunal could dispose of the matter in a summary manner. That was the main change that had happened from the previous years. At that time, there was no multiplier. Multiplier was introduced much later in the year 1994 by the amendment of by the introduction of section 163A. So 1988 Act brought out a change by bringing a procedure as far as the tribunals are concerned, where the tribunals are enjoined to conduct a trial in a summary manner as prescribed under the rules. So now you all know that Tamil Nadu government also brought new motor vehicle rules, as well as special rules as far as the motor vehicle claims tribunals are concerned. The rule, Tamil Nadu Motor Vehicle Accident Claims Tribunal Rules 1989, where certain important provisions were made. That was also a deviation from the past, not only deviation from the past, from the deviation from the regular manner in which we would conduct the civil litigations. one important factor by the section 4A. 4A, as far as section 4A is concerned, actually, in fact, it is almost, tribunals are almost given a power of suo motu initiating an inquiry in respect of an accident, so that the compensation to reach to each and every victim of any accident. In fact, if you take 4A, you would find that the police officer who investigates the crime with reference to the accident has to send a report, has to make an application to the tribunal, and the tribunal has to initiate proceedings for providing compensation to the victims. So almost it is like a suo motu power under 4A. Then if you come down regarding the procedure, under section like Workmen Compensation Act, even if the tribunal finds that the application is faulty or not been presented in a proper manner, it should not reject it, because taking public policy in mind and the public justice in mind, the procedure has been drafted in such a way it is for the tribunal to see to it that defects are rectified. Nowadays, they are finding even some tribunals dismissing matters for default even against minors. Then under section 5, on the presentation of the complaint, the tribunal has to examine the claimant. This is even prior to issuing notice to the respondents. The tribunal has to examine the claimant and reduce the substance of such examination in writing. Because you all know that the difference between a summary trial and the rest of the other ordinary trial. In ordinary trial, the entire evidence to be recorded as the witness says. But as far as summary trial is concerned, because now by virtue of the rule 25, the summary trial is as that of the trial, summary trial described in the criminal procedure code. So where also the court need to only reduce the substance into writing. The court need not record the statement of the witness as the witness states. Each and every word need not be reproduced. The court has to examine the claimant and then reduce the substance of what is in his claim. That is enough as far as the summary trial is concerned. Then after the filing of the written statement, even for written statement of not only the insurer, but also the owner, the court has to grant a leave, and on the presentation of the written statement, the court can examine the owner as well as the insurer, and where also the substance is to be reduced in writing. Then under rule 11, the court is enjoined to visit the place of accident and make statements from the persons who are there, who are privy to the accident or privy to actually seen the accident. And such statements need not be like other examination to be taken on oath. Neither signature of such persons to be taken. The court has to, it is like court has to make a local inquiry, and we are reposing the entire faith upon the tribunal in making statements from the persons who are having knowledge about the accident. So this is the manner in which the courts are enjoined to conduct the trial as far as motor accident claims are concerned. Actually, what has happened, because unfortunately what the law has intended has not been taken in its true spirit. That's what I must say. Because even for taking, even for the implementation of Rule 4A, we have seen not only the rule, but also there are two judgments of either this Honorable Court as well as the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, directing the police officials to provide all particulars relating to the criminal investigation to the victims or to the tribunal or to the insurance company. Because now we see that police are, the moment that accident have happened, the police are registering an FIR. Now, though they are saying the FIR is being uploaded in the website, it's not available in all cases. And also it is a difficult job for the claimants to collect the FIR without the assistance of an advocate. And no document goes to the insurance company and also to the tribunal, though the law mandates the police official to forward these documents to the insurance company as well as to the tribunal taking up the matter. And not only the FIR, we see in all cases that police are not even checking whether the person who has caused the accident is having a license at all. We are not seeing, because many cases where we are able to show that the driver driver did not have a valid license, and we are not able to see anything from the first information report. It is not a difficult job for the police who are registering the case to see from the driver whether he has got a license or not, because the police can always call upon the driver to produce the license, and in his absence the police could record or can initiate and can add it as another offense as against the driver. Similarly, the insurance certificate, because the rule provides that the insurance certificate to be collected and forwarded to the victim as well as the tribunal. In no case we find that the police are checking up whether the owner has got the valid insurance certificate in respect of the offending vehicle. So where also the provision as well as our judgments are breached more in its implementation. The two judgments, you all know that in 2003, His Lordship Justice Sadashivam rendered in our case, United India versus Venkateshan, and subsequently in 2007, Supreme Court has rendered a judgment. But we are not seeing any of these two judgments are also being followed, those circulars being sent to the officials. And secondly, about the procedure that is being followed in the courts, because anybody having a practice before the tribunal would say how much time it is being taken by the tribunals to conclude a trial, conclude the examinations. For claimant would be examined on one date, and the court sincerely records each and every statement of the claimant. And thereafter, nowadays, I don't know whether they are filing proof affidavit or not. And thereafter, it would be take for days for cross-examining the witness. Because I find, in spite of the directions of our High Court to take it up as a day-to-day matter, or within not more than 3 days time to be given for examination, still if you go to the tribunals, you would find that the courts are posting the matters 15 days or 20 days thereafter for examination, for the cross-examination. Then the examination on the side of the insurance company, I am told in many cases that the insurance advocates are taking time after time to bring their officials to be examined. So it takes a lot of time for the tribunal to conclude the examination of witnesses, though the act intends it to be conducted as if it is a summary trial. The court need not even, actually I do not know whether even cross-examination the law intended, because from the reading of the provisions of the rule, I find that the court has to examine the claimant even prior to issuing notice, where they have to reduce only the substance of what the claimant says. So I don't know whether even the rule intends the cross-examination to be taken. But anyway, if the evidences are not recorded with all sincerity, there would always be complaints from the advocates. So I do not know whether because of that reason the learned judges or of the tribunal are recording the evidence as the witness says and not leaving a single word, and giving sufficient time for cross-examination and also for other evidences. Here it not only delays the trial and delays the payment of compensation or determination of compensation to the claimant, it also takes away a substantial judicial time. The court could utilize the time for other useful purposes if we could reduce the time taken for the trial of the motor accident claims. And not only the judicial time and also the expenditures involved. We all know, if you calculate, because how much the government spends for conducting a court, if you take a court, the court working hour is actually 8 hours. If you divide it by hours or minutes, and the expenditure of the government in running the court's salary of the judicial officer, other staff, and maintenance of the buildings, sometimes it may go even above the amount involved in the litigation. That I always used to wonder. So that gave an input into my mind, because one day, that's what I referred it to my friend earlier. One day I was sitting in a district court to conduct another matter. While I was waiting, an examination of an insurance official was going on. It went on for hours. Then I wondered what's the necessity of cross-examining this man into what is being stated in the insurance policy. Because however much he say, because he's not a person who is privy to the contract of assets, he was not the person who has taken the money and issued the certificate. He is the person who has brought the record from the office, and what he could state which is contrary to what is stated, what is already there in the document. What is the necessity of a person to be examined on a document? So when I thought about it, it struck my mind that what is the necessity of the entire evidence? Can we dispense with the evidence as far as motor accident claims are concerned? It is not something new, because even in consumer cases, we are deciding disputes without any evidence, except only in complicated matters where the medical negligence is involved. We are taking evidence more in the nature of an expert evidence. Otherwise, in consumer matters, crores of worth of matters are being disposed of without the aid of the examination of witnesses, but merely on the basis of affidavits. And even as far as the civil cases are concerned, I would joke in a lighter vein, I would say, with some any trained mind, having at least some experience in civil litigations, even by the mere reading of the plaint, one can see the truthfulness of the case in 50% of the cases. By mere reading of the plaint as well as the perusal of the documents produced along with the plaint, we can decide 50% of the cases. By reading of the written statement, we can decide 75% of the cases. And with the external aids like commissioner's report or the surveyor's report or an expert opinion regarding the documents, we could decide even 99% of the cases. That's in the lighter vein, but I'm not far from the truth in saying so. I have seen that even our law commission once thought of dispensing with evidence in civil cases, and it was not carried out. But in European countries, and I have read that many countries, they are not having oral evidence as far as civil cases are concerned. So my friend Mr. Srinivasan, in his initial words, told that he was asking me to do a session. But actually, in fact, I was very reluctant in the beginning. I used to write, but I am not well versed in putting it in spoken words, because while writing you can always correct yourself, but while speaking we cannot correct. We would be dragged on our own thoughts. Where while writing we can stop it, we can have a thought or process and all. But while speaking, that's always a difficulty. But however, the appreciation would be immediate. So I was reluctant at that initial days, because as he said that I would handle all types of cases, but not a master of a single subject. I could call myself as a jack of all trades. But it struck me at that time, why not we use this session to put forward the propositions, or I would say doubts, because not only on this examination of witnesses in a motor accident claims, but also a few other things concerning the motor accident claims. That in the course of the time, because I'm practicing effectively in motor accident claims from the inception of the Madurai High Court, thanks to my senior and well-wisher and my benefactor, Mr. Vedantam. These doubts have crept in my mind. So I'm making use of this session to put forward the doubts or propositions before the August audience. And I would be happy if I get proper feedback or or more inputs into it. So in future, it could be, somebody would think of, who is the helm of power would bring it out in practice. So first, let us take the necessity of the evidence, oral evidence in motor accident claims. In motor accident claims, mainly we have three issues. The quantum of compensation, because first the court has to decide the negligence, and secondly the court has to decide the liability of the insurance company if the vehicle is insured, so that the court can fix the liability of the insurance company. And thirdly, the quantum of compensation to be paid. So let me take the quantum of compensation. The quantum of compensation would arise in three ways: either for the death of the victim, or for the personal injury of the victim, or for the property loss. In all these cases, now the law is almost well settled that we can calculate the compensation with mathematical precision. But let us take the case of a death, where also the formula is now well settled. Now we can't deviate from the formula, but only hitch is to find out the income of a particular person. That is the only thing. To find out the income of the particular person, we rely upon the documents. That is, suppose if he is a salaried class person, we would rely upon the document, the salary or the income tax returns, or any other returns. Only we rely upon the document, because no court would simply go by the evidence of the parties. Because as far as our country is concerned, we would never shy of giving any false evidence. False evidence or bringing false evidence. Many of the, because we all know well, even in murder cases, the police are bringing only the close relatives, whether they are there or not, to be a witness. The other witnesses would not take interest and would turn hostile. And similarly, in civil litigations, that who are close to the victims, we would bring it as a witness, and the witness would state whatever the lawyer put in his mouth. So now, as per the no courts is taking up the statement of witnesses, and we see, because the court, from the totality of the circumstance, because when you by my continuous reading of the judgments of the tribunals, I could say, from the totality of the entire circumstance, the court would frame its mind to grant a compensation. Then the court would pick lines one or two from the evidence, because not only in motor accident claims, even in other civil litigations, we find evidences running into hundreds of pages. Ultimately, when you see the judgment, only few lines would have been picked from the evidence. Otherwise, the entire matter would have been decided on the basis of the documents, or sometimes even from the demeanor of witnesses. So now, as far as death case is concerned, the court would only rely upon the documents. The difficulty would arise only in respect of the persons who are in the lower state of life. For instance, a vegetable vendor, a street vendor. There would not be any document to show a particular person is a street vendor or not. Where also the court is not deciding the matter on any adverse evidence brought by the insurance company or the cross-examination of the witness. To my knowledge, I have not seen an insurance company is conducting an investigation into the employment or avocation of the victim and bringing evidence to the court. And secondly, neither I find where the in respect of these kind of people, persons, the insurance company bringing out, or I would say insurance company, we can take it as a respondent. Anything brought out from the mouth of the witness. Whereas now the law is, because the courts have to guesstimate, a rational estimation the court has to make. I would always advocate a person maintaining a wife and two children. Suppose a person has wife and two children, either minor or major children, that is definitely worth of earning a minimum of 10,000 rupees per month. 10,000 rupees, I am saying, far low. Or there are other factors. A person owning a motorbike, he may be having a motorbike. So the person owning a motorbike, definitely, unless and until a person earns a sum of 15,000 per month, he could not own a motorbike. So these external factors alone would go to help the tribunal to arrive at a conclusion as to the income of a particular person. So it is not necessary, in my respectful view, that the court has to spend time on examination of witness to find out the quantum of compensation. It could be decided on the basis of affidavit and the documents. An advance copy could be served to the respondent, respondent could examine the veracity of the affidavit and bring out anything contrary, either by document or by word evidence to the court. And even in the case of personal injuries, we judiciously accept whatever the medical bills that is being produced by the claimants, but from the reputed hospitals, because we are not accepting other. Because now we have either government hospitals or private hospitals. Private hospitals, now all hospitals are being digitalized and having a pakka billing system and all. So the courts, whatever the money spent by a particular person could be seen from the documents. There is no necessity of a oral evidence. And regarding the disability, where also we accept whatever been stated by the doctor who treated the person with reference to his disability. Sometimes court would say, on seeing the victim, though the doctor has certified it 65%, I would take it as 50%. It all now we have got the now by virtue of the judgments, we are referring the persons are being referred to the medical board, where the person is being examined by three experts who give their independent opinion, where one cannot say that they have any stake in giving that certificates. So where also now we have got the aid of a medical board also to find out the disability, where the courts go by the medical experts, because it is oral evidence. I don't think it is necessary, because always they go by the certificate given by the doctor unless it is seriously disputed by the insurance company. So may not be necessary, where also the court has to spend time and the doctor has to come to the court and sit there and waiting and all these things. And lastly, with reference to liability. Liability, I fail to understand what is the necessity of evidence. Because there is a policy. If you are not able to write a policy or draft a policy, which could not be understood even by a legally trained person, then it is not an agreement at all. The agreement has to be thrown out as mistake of fact. So insurance policy is there. Where the difficulty arises, why the insurance company is producing a policy? To say that the policy was already over, that can be seen from the policy. To say that the driver did not have a valid license, for which a different proof. Where also the court only relies upon ultimately what they say. We have to write a letter to the owner calling upon him to produce the license, and we have to bring the records from the concerned RTO's office, because and where a standard defense would be, driving license could be taken anywhere in India. But normally court would be satisfied if records are being produced from the concerned RTO's office, where the accident had taken place, as if accidents would not take place in other places. But anyway, to that extent, so what here we could easily solve this issue by insisting the tribunal has to take aid from the rules. They can call upon the investigating officer to find out from him whether he had seen the driving license, whether he had inquired with the driver at the time of accident, whether the driver had the license. And we can even instruct the investigating officials to prepare a note on that. He had seen the driving license, and in that case, he must record the number of the driving license. And he must annex, and in the CD diary, he has to annex a xerox copy of the driving license. Similarly, the insurance certificate. Both things, because at the time of accident, the driver would be available. At the time of accident, the owner would be available. But at the time of trial, the driver would not be available. He might have gone somewhere, nobody could trace him. Even the owner would not be in a position to trace him. So the police officials can always record. This is a very simple procedure where he can record the driving license as well as the insurance certificate. So tribunal could take aid from the police official. The insurance company need not go through the trouble of bringing RTO's official and summons, waiting, adjournment, so many things. All these things could be avoided. If at all any investigating officer has not noted, the tribunal can even direct the department action to be taken for violation of the rules. So this could be solved there also. And about the nature of the policy. Nature of the policy also, the court has to read, because if you take the scheme of the act, the insurer has no role at all. Actually, in fact, the insurer has no role at all. It is because the scheme of the act expected the owner to bring the policy to the court and produce it and saying, see, I have taken a policy. I have taken a policy. So if at all any compensation is to be fixed, it is to be payable by the insurance company. This is what the scheme of the act intends. But now in normal course, we find no owner is coming forward to produce the policy, or even if he has a policy, nobody would worry about the summons. They would not even report the matter to the insurance company, and the insurance company would come to know about it only at the time of receiving summons from the tribunal. And by virtue of the provisions of the act, sometimes an insurance company at Assam would receive a summons because complaint could be filed, petition could be filed at any place where the petitioner chooses. So it could. So they where also the policy. Anyway, the insurance company is producing a policy. From the reading of the policy in that and the provisions of the act, the tribunal can always come to a conclusion whether the policy would cover the particular person. And if at all the tribunal has got any doubt, it can ask the insurance company advocate to argue on that or to explain the policy. Or still, if they have doubt in interpreting the provisions of the policy, they can call upon the insurance company official and take his opinion. That's all. And evidence is not required, because evidence only if you want to say something which is contrary to the document. Otherwise, what is the necessity of the evidence when the document is in black and white? So in my this doubt is lingering still in my mind. Why we have to go through the trouble of examining the parties as far as the motor accident claims are concerned? So I am placing it before this August forum to ponder over it and to respond to it and tell me what are all the disadvantages as well as the advantages. This is my first proposition. Secondly, that is most important, where we have to frame laws, get over two judgments of the Supreme Court regarding the contingent agreements. We all know there is a special breed of advocates who are conducting motor accident claims. You may call them ambulance chasers and whatever name. But invariably, I've seen in almost all cases, the agreement between the party as well as the advocate is that the advocate to take a percentage of the award amount from the claimant. Senior, I would go on with that.
No, time is not the constraint. Time is not the constraint.
Okay. So it is not. So it is all you have seen. But as far as India is concerned, entering into a champerty agreement is not illegal. It's not a crime, unlike British laws. But what had happened in 1954, a senior advocate entered into an agreement with a client for 50% of the fees. It was not a motor accident claim, in a regular civil litigation. Thereafter, Bar Council proceedings were initiated against him. Then the matter went to the Supreme Court. And before the Supreme Court, he argued such agreement is not illegal as far as India is concerned. So he could enter into such an agreement, because at that time, even our Advocates Act was only in 1961, and where the etiquettes were framed. Supreme Court said the agreement may be legal because it compared the British as well as Indian laws. Agreement may be legal, but an advocate cannot enter into an agreement. Enter into such an agreement with the client because advocate cannot take interest in the litigation. And then the Supreme Court has somehow condoned it, but warned him that about the legal action, because the Supreme Court said that such would amount to a misconduct on the part of an advocate. So Supreme Court deprecated, and the judgment was rendered in 1954. Then in 1991, then came the Advocates Act 1961, where separate rules have been framed with reference to advocates' conduct, where it is also provided standard of professional conduct and etiquette, where Rule 20, an advocate shall not stipulate for a fee contingent on the results of litigation or agree to share the proceeds thereof. So now by virtue of the provisions of the Advocates Act, it is prohibited for an advocate to enter into an agreement with the client for a contingent fee. Then in 1991, Supreme Court said even other such agreement between the private parties as opposed to public policy. So there are two judgments of the Supreme Court. One says that even a sham purchase agreement could not be enforced, and the other one states that it would become a misconduct on the part of an advocate to enter into an agreement. And now the rules framed by under the Advocates Act is also there. But in spite of all this, if we put our hand in our heart and answer, we would say that 99% of the cases, the advocates are entering into agreements with the client to take a share of the fees. So, because we are not seeing the reality. When we are away from the reality, these things should happen. So why we have to, because now the entire community of advocates, we are painting them as advocates committing a misconduct. Instead, can we rectify the system? Because in the 54 judgment, Supreme Court deals with the American system, but what it says that what is in America could not be imported here. But what is in British was imported here by virtue of this, and we are saying that this is illegal and misconduct on the part of the advocate. So how to rectify the system? That will be a win-win situation for both claimants as well as the advocates. I read about one baby food case, because how these people helped, in spite of all our reservations and comments, I would always maintain that except for these advocates, many of the claimants would not have got the compensation. Because as I said, when I started, because I started my practice, I had a close company with these advocates, because my senior was the counsel for the State Transport Corporation, Kattapapa Transport Corporation. So on the second day, he allowed me to draft a counter statement. I did not know ABC of law at that time. So I took up all the old counter statements and I drafted the counter. And thereafter, we got a good opportunity of cross-examining witnesses, because you know that State Transport Corporation, we can go and we can ask any questions and nobody would mind. And neither the court also would mind. Then some advocates, one or two advocates in my office were handling these cases. They took my aid, because that was my initial fees I used to get. They give me the particulars, I would draft a petition for them. So for drafting, I would get a fees. But I seen that many of the cases would have gone without any proceedings, because they would take it upon themselves to see to it an FIR being registered. In many cases, the police would not even register an FIR, and I have seen people running to all corners to find out the vehicle. I know that in one instance, I see that that advocate went to all the depots and took out the timings of all the buses flying, because at that time, as I said, they would only go against the State Transport Corporation. They would avoid other private vehicles, because at that time they were richer. They were cash rich also. Transport corporations. Immediately, the compensation could be realized immediately, and attachments were unheard of in those days. Nowadays, all the buses, I think that more buses are there in the port than in the depot. So they would go and find out the timings of the buses. Then they would decide that this particular bus would have caused this accident, and then see to it that proper FIR been filed and investigation been done. Because now because in the 80s and all, most of the victims of road accidents are ordinary poor people. Ordinary poor people, even today, because that is what we are, the courts are applying the principle of equity. So they would not have a wherewithal to go against and find out or to investigate all these things, except for the assistance of an advocate. So advocate only would assist. But at the time when they take up the case, just imagine how many of the clients would be in a position to pay the fees to the advocate, or to bear the expenses that the advocate has to incur in getting all these documents. Even for getting an FIR, advocate has to incur an expense. So, but for these advocates, these litigations could not have been taken place. That is what I used to always remember an incident a contaminated baby food was sold, and many babies got stunted growth. But however, what had happened? All the babies in United States got their due compensation, and most of the babies in England couldn't get their compensation. The cost of litigation is prohibitively costly, both in England as well as in US. But England, that's another added problem. If you lose the litigation, you'll also have to pay the entire cost of the other side. So the cost of litigation is very high. You can't normally approach a legal firm in London unless you have sufficient money. So now many of the children could not prosecute the case. They couldn't get the compensation. And last week also I was reading a book by Lord Denning. He has referred about an interesting case. Actually, as a conservative British judge, he is very much against advocates entering into a contingent fee, very much against the American system. And he is referring about the case in support of his defense, in support of his claim. But still, if we read it in full, we would find that the contingent contract would help the litigant in many cases. And you know that in US and all, the fees would be 40%. 40% of the, but they would take up the entire expenses, because every lawyer's firm would have a full team of investigators. They have their own investigators, everything. Apart from expenses, they would take 40% as the fees. We might have seen in many films, and one such film is Eric Brooker, the Julia Roberts film, where she would agitate against a company causing environment hazard. Then she would be taken as a legal clerk. Then the final fees also she would take up. Which case?
Pelican Brief.
Not that.
Pelican Brief.
Erin Brockovich or something. Julia Roberts. Then she would be taken as a clerk in that office, and her cut would be around 20%. She would become a billionaire. Anyway, in this case, what had happened? One Texan oil company was engaged in England to do some work, where a Portuguese was employed. So in an accident, the Portuguese was injured, and he would be taken to Portuguese. And what he says that he was sufficiently taken care of by the company, because Lord Denning says sufficiently taken care of by the company regarding his medical expenses and all, and he was comfortably sent to the Portuguese also. Then what he proceeds to say, the Portuguese consulate put him in touch with a good firm of solicitors in London. So Portuguese firm engaged a solicitor firm in London to initiate a litigation for damages. And the company was prepared to settle that for £2 lakh, 200,000 pounds. They were prepared to settle. And he says that it's a very fair settlement in English standards. But somehow, he proceeds to say, but then a firm of solicitors from Texas came on the scene. They went over to Portugal and persuaded the man to drop the English proceedings. So the American lawyers descended. Then they said, what you are doing? Why you are agitating in England? We'll take up the case to US, and we'll see that how much they would give. Similarly, I've seen it even I've read in a newspaper immediately after the Bhopal tragedy, 50% of the ambulance chasers from America took ticket to India. They all came, they entered into agreement with so many persons, then they initiated litigations, then the Indian government intervened. Then ultimately, where on the point of jurisdiction, the matter was sent back to India. So here, then the government has passed a legislation. Government become the sole prosecutor for all the claimants. Then rest is history. You all know what had happened. Similar thing happened here. Then American lawyer descended and took the matter to US and took the matter away from the British solicitors. Then what he says that the case could have been settled. But it's still the case has a lesson for us in England. Never allow lawyers to work on the basis of contingency fee. Why is saying the case is still pending in the American courts? But the next paragraph he has added, news has just come to hand. I got the news now that ultimately the matter is over, where the compensation is 1.5 million pounds. 1.5 million pounds. Where what he said as a fair compensation in British standards was only 2 lakh pounds. Then ultimately the American court decided it 1.5 billion pounds, that is 15 lakh, you would say. And the party got 8 lakhs. So 7 lakhs, 7 lakh pounds, the what he says that the advocates would have got. So what he, so, so ultimately what he could have got in England, only 2 lakh pounds, and where we have not added the legal fees. Since the matter has gone to the US, the same victim has got 8 lakh pounds. So there are some advantages, and as I said, a person would get a maximum compensation because the advocate would put his entire mind and energy into the case, because his fate is also depending on the outcome. And secondly, many claimants would not be in a position to get all the documents. Because whoever comes to our office, regular traditional civil office, we would always ask her what happened to this document, go and collect this document. And sometimes if they don't have the document, we know how we treat them, how angry we'll get. So in the same fashion, if you treat the victims of accident, no victim would take the courage to go to an advocate office and get justice. Though the act has been amended, it is for the trial, because as I said, the proceedings could be initiated by the investigating officer, but it will not be, and then the tribunal can initiate suo proceeding. But even the summary proceeding and all could not be enforced, and this would not happen. So to some extent, to most extent, I feel that as far as these claims are concerned, it requires it requires a change in mind. So how this could be done for the benefit of the claimants? We can frame the, because we have to, first of all, this could be done only by legislative amendments. But my proposition or my suggestion, there can be an agreement, legally acceptable or legally with a regular format, under which every person, either he can choose in a regular manner or he can enter into an agreement with the advocate. In case if he enters into an agreement with the advocate, the agreement would form part of the records. The agreement also to be filed along with our color, where the advocate have to keep a record about the expenses he incur. Because we are seeing, because I have seen advocates helping the people at the first instance for their family expenditure. So we can keep a record of all the expenditures. Then the court can fix a contingent fee of 15% or even 10%. Then at the end of the matter, the court could allow that fees as well. Nowadays also, even today, the court is allowing the court expenditure as well as the fees, which the respondent is paying. So here also, if a fee is provided at either 10% or 15%, the fee plus other expenses, the court has to approve the expenditures which the advocate has recorded as per the agreement. And if the court allows that expenditure as well as the fees, it would be paid directly by the respondent in the name of an advocate. Because in fact, what had happened before 1989, the entire amount, because in all civil litigations, advocate is the power of attorney of the client. So all money, everything would come in the name of the advocate. So prior to 89, you would not believe the entire compensation would be deposited in the account of the advocate. So my friends used to say, because the moment they see that money, at that time, even 1 lakh is a very, very big compensation. 50,000, 40,000 in their accounts. It will give a sense of deja vu in their mind. But if the entire money would be deposited in the advocate's account, then the client would be at the mercy of the advocate to collect his money. And some unscrupulous advocates took advantage of the situation. That we all know what had happened. Then the rules have been framed under which the petition to be presented before the court by the party, and a check would be issued only in the name of the party, and the court will have to inform the party as to the amount drawn on the check. Court has to inform that the entire money belongs to the claimant, and now easiest transaction. Then it made it, because even in those cases I have seen, initially the clients would see the advocates as their God. So the moment the money has come, even advocates who are charging a very reasonable 10% to 12%, would be behind those clients, because at that time suddenly a relative would step in. Why you have to pay this much of amount to the advocate? Then step in, then the client would change his mind. Advocate has to go behind him up to the bank and then has to take the check. Because I am not hesitating to say this, but this is happening, because we all know this is happening all over India. Because except for 1 or 2 cases where the clients should be big shots, they go for regular advocates, because I myself have referred 1 or 2 matters to others where the entire expenditure, everything was taken in advance. But this is happening in 99% of the cases. So why not we have a rethinking about revisiting those judgments, at least as far as the motor accident claims are concerned. Because otherwise, we are making criminals or advocates committing a misconduct by bringing in such unrealistic regulations. Because this is, as I said, these are some justifications are there for the advocates to take interest as far as motor accident claims are concerned. Our law, we are changing, because American system, one cannot say that it's an injustice. We cannot say it's an injustice. Neither we can say it is against public policy, because the entire US is following that practice, and many other countries are following that practice. If it is a public policy, morality is same all over the world. If it is against public policy, it should be public. It should be against public policy in US as well. So my other next, because this is the way in which the law has to advance further. That is what my endeavor today. Because I would strongly advocate that the necessary amendments to be made in the Advocates Act to permit contingent contracts between the advocate and party, at least in a motor accident claims, that will render justice to parties as well as the advocates, because advocates also would get their fees in a more dignified way, and parties also would not lose anything. Because if 1 lakh is awarded, the entire 1 lakh would go to the party directly. Thereafter, the advocate could not demand a single pay out of it. The legal fees and expenditure would come in the hands of the advocates. So this is my, this is second one. And 2 more, I would conclude with that. You all know, that is regarding the insurance. My perpetual fear is that I own a car, my wife as well as daughter also having that separate car. But the payment of insurance would always be upon my head, because I'll have to, because my agent is taking care of their vehicles as well, and a 2-wheeler is there. My perpetual fear every year would be, what would happen if my agent fails to remind me about the expiry of the insurance. But so far so good, because never he would fail. He would tell me in advance 1 month that the insurance, because that's what I used to tell him, that why not we club all the policies together and pay the premium at once. But he said that it is not possible, for which you have to pay for that entire year and then only could change it, but he's not giving me any way. So I have to totally depending upon my agent to remind me about the expiry of policy, because every year we have to renew. Even if you renew, fails to renew it for 1 day, and if something happens, the entire consequence would be upon my head. You all know that the Supreme Court has taken up Rajashekaran versus Union of India, taking note of the large number of accidents in India and the very tragic results. Supreme Court has taken up a writ petition, Rajashekar versus Union of India, where they are passing series of directions. And even today, they are passing only by virtue of the directions of the Supreme Court. The speed governors are being installed in the vehicles. One of the directions is with reference to the policy, because Supreme Court, it was also brought to the knowledge of the Supreme Court, in many cases the vehicle owners are not renewing their policy, or many vehicles involved in the accident are not having policy, leaving the claimant high and dry. So Supreme Court said, why not, from the IRDO's suggestion, Supreme Court said that the policy period to be increased up to 5 years for the two-wheelers and 3 years for the four-wheelers. Then accordingly, IRDA issued instructions. Now I think they have taken it back. Yes, Mr. CV? Hello?
Only PA coverage is taken. Only PA coverage is taken.
PA coverage.
TP coverage
And
is
where
there.
also they gave a
PA coverage is
suggestion, okay, at least for liability, because what they say, you take at least liability policy for 5 years and 3 years. This will lead to two disastrous results, in my opinion, because private vehicle owners always take care in insuring our vehicles, because private vehicle owners, because we are aware of the things, we are aware of the consequences. So we always take care. If you take the vehicles, because we fail to take only because of, as I said, that absence of mind, not by deliberation. But other small vehicles like Kutiyane and all, those people would not worry about the consequences. Normally, we would always take risks. Even today, we are seeing so many number of goods vehicles carrying hundreds of passengers. Everywhere, if you go, you can find, in spite of several directions, several judgments, everything, and still we are not stopping carrying passengers in the goods vehicle. So as far as private vehicle owners, we always take care to insure our vehicles and also to renew our vehicles. But only those people would not do that. And secondly, if it is every year, my absent maintenance would be reduced. I always know, okay, this is for 1 year, next year. Then the moment the next year starts, it will come into my mind. But if it is 5 years or 3 years, it is my suspicion that I would tend to forget after 5 years or after 3 years. And this will not stop the other people, because that where it is a case of deliberation, not absent-mindedness. It will not stop those people. And secondly, the cost of insurance also would go, because we have to pay the premium for 3 years at one go. So I will tempted to take a liability policy instead of a package policy. If I own a car, if it's a liability policy, if the premium is 100 rupees, for a package policy, it will be 200 rupees. So adding together for 3 years, instead of taking 600, instead of spending 6 years, I take a risk of 300 by paying. So that tendency to take a liability policy would increase by increasing the period of insurance. So what is my suggestion from because what had happened in Indrajit's case, because in the case of a dishonor of check, we all know the insurance company could cancel the policy if it has not received the money, because policy would be issued only even on the issuance of checks. And tomorrow, if the check is dishonored, the policy would be cancelled. So then the duty of the insurance company is to inform the owner. The insurance company has to inform the owner, stating, see, your policy is to be cancelled because your check is not yet honored. Then there is another duty cast upon the insurance company under the Motor Tariff 24, Indian Motor Tariff 24, that they also have to inform the registry vehicle RTO. They also have to inform, RTO. But no insurance company would do that. It was even the 24, even Bihar this 24, insurance company considered the case of in Indrajit Kaur. In Indrajit Kaur, 1998. In that case, Supreme Court used the specific word, because by issuing a certificate, you are giving a representation. You are representing to the authorities that so vehicle is insured. What does it mean? Because what the Act says, no vehicle can be plyed in a public place without an insurance, which means plying a vehicle in a public place without an insurance would become an offense. It is an offense to ply a vehicle. So who has to prosecute? It is the authorities who have got the power to prosecute the vehicle owner. And what if the authorities fail to take action? If you take the law in a broader sense, the authority was failed to take action. would be proceeded for damages. So here, insurance company, by insuring a vehicle at the first instance, sending a representation to the authority, so vehicle being insured with us, now it is safe for the vehicle to be plied. What the Supreme Court says, such a representation is not only to the authorities but also to the common public. So if somebody is hit by the vehicle, there is always a guarantee for the payment of compensation. So such authority, such representation being made. So once you cancel the policy, your duty is not only to intimate the claimant, but also to the authority, so that the authority will take action if it does not take another policy. Because every vehicle at the time of registration must have to be compulsorily registered. Otherwise, registration would not be done. So at the first instance, the authorities are well informed. Then it is the duty of the insurance company to inform the authority. So at the expiry of every year, what my suggestion, taking into consideration my absent-mindedness, every policy to run on from April to and along with the financial year. And every part under the policy, a party has to go for renewal in the last month of every year. By December, all policies to be renewed. So nobody can say that they have forgotten to renew the policy. And the insurance company has to complete the process before the end of March. Then in the month of end of January, now all digitalized, may not be a problem. Then before February end, they have to intimate the concerned RTO's office that so and so person has taken an insurance for the previous year, has not come forward to renew it. Then it is for the RTO to initiate action in the month of March to seize all the vehicles which are not insured. Now a doubt would crop in your mind, what will happen, because I can choose my insurance company, next year I can go to another insurance company. Because where also the IRDA, because of the Bomi's case, a division bench, while considering the IMT 24 was considered, where it is provided that the insurance company has to intimate the owner as well as the authority about the cancellation of the policy. Where our division bench considered in Bomi's case about the IRDA regulations, a policy can be cancelled only after ensuring that the vehicle is insured elsewhere. So there is another duty cast upon the insurance company to ensure that the policy is renewed in another place, even while cancelling the policy. So these are all the obligations upon the insurance company. So here, suppose a person wants to take an insurance from another company for an old vehicle, they have to produce the earlier policy to that other company, and the other company has to intimate this company so that they can set the record correct. If such intimation comes, they need not report it to the insurance authority, because these are only proposition. The matter is still before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is pondering over reducing the accidents and also to provide compensation to all the victims. So here, this is one of the problems, that we have vehicles flying without insurance. So this is one more suggestion or which you can take, or a proposition, or the way in which the law can be taken forward. The policies, all policies, to be given on a financial year basis. Even if you take a policy in the month of December, let them calculate the pro rata basis. Let them calculate the premium for 3 months. So in that here, that would become easier, because whenever I take policy or whenever I vehicle, I go for renewal, because always I'll keep it in mind that I'll have to go for renewal in the month of December. And insurance companies also has the duty to intimate the persons who are not renewed to the RTO's office in the month of February. And RTO has to take strict action by seizing all the vehicles, imposing heavy fines, because flying such vehicles which will ruin an entire family. An entire family will be ruined if the vehicle caused any accident or that if there is no policy. And because then what's the next step? Because where also law could be amended, that not only the owner as well as the insurer to be made as respondents, But also state could be made as respondent. Now they are saying so many other things, insurance fund, solution fund, so many things. But why not the state be made parties in such cases where the state has failed to find out the actual offender in the case of hit and run cases, or that the state has failed to take action against a vehicle which is plying without insurance. So this is my third one. And last one may not be necessary in view of the view amendment. You all know that a Motor Vehicle Act is been amended recently. But however, the amendments with reference to motor accident claims have not yet been notified due to various problems. One of the major changes is the giving up of section 163A and the second schedule. You know that after the 1988 Act, in 1994, because in 88 Act, there was a system of no fault liability under section 140. Whoever may be at fault, the victim has to pay a basic minimum compensation. This is emanating basic minimum compensation, even if the negligence is on his part. So this is from the basic concept of strict liability. We all know, if you let a dangerous substance in a public place, irrespective of the negligence or anything, if you have to compensate a victim of such a dangerous thing being in public place. So vehicles are being plied between Chennai to Madurai, and it cuts through so many villages. Necessarily the villages have to cross the road. We know how it's difficult to cross the 4-lane track. So say a minimum compensation is being provided, for which you have to take insurance. You can't say that I have no money, how I can pay. But then 163A been introduced because the court has found that ordinary poor people would be finding it difficult because their cases are being defeated. So that instead of proving negligence, they could get some compensation. So 163A been introduced. A second schedule is there. If you take second schedule, because there is a little confusion, but it is no confusion in my, and even Supreme Court got confused and commented that there are some discrepancies. I would not say it is a discrepancy, Mr. Srinivasan knows. A multiplier is also there, and also the full quantum of compensation is also provided. And the monthly income is provided under the second schedule. So suppose if the monthly income is 300, a multiplier is provided, and what would be the compensation quantum, that is also provided. If you multiply the income with that multiplier, you would not get the figure on the other column. So the Supreme Court found that there was some discrepancy in the second schedule, but in my opinion, if you read it fully, it is not a discrepancy, because the full compensation is provided is in respect of death cases. Multiplier is only in the cases of accident cases. If you read the second part of the second schedule, one would find the multiplier would be applicable only in calculating the compensation for personal accident cases. Where also for personal accident, because why? Because Justice, and here, as far as second schedule is concerned, the person's income should not be more than 40,000 rupees yearly income, very minimum income. Now, Justice Kirbaran once asked me, now you have to suggest me how I could compensation for a person who is earning more, but he wants to restrict it to 40,000, but he wanted to give more also. But I couldn't answer because the law is there, it is for the legislature to decide, or for your lordship to say something, or asking the legislature to amend the law. So 40,000. So the actual compensation provided, that is for provided, if you take the second schedule, if it is 8 lakhs is provided, the 8 lakhs is the compensation for death. There is no, the multiplier is superfluous. There is no necessity to take the aid of multiplier. But if you take the second part, you would find, as far as personal injury cases are concerned, the multiplier will, along with the loss of earning power, where sky is the limit. If you take that, the first the table is for accident death case. The second part, we need not, because there is no restriction. So in my respective opinion, 163 also could have been interpreted in such a way that multiplier is for a person, is for the loss of earning power, for which there is no restriction. I do not know. Anyway, here, as I said, negligence, I left out when I said about the examination, the third point about negligence. So here I can point out here, even for negligence, we are seeing the courts are not deciding the matter because for which a specific procedure being provided. The court can visit the place and find out what would have happened from the statement of the persons who are there who could not be witness. It is not a statement on oath. Their statement that they need not sign it. So the courts have been given such a power to see and find out what could have happened. Now all the tribunals are deciding the matter on the basis of the observation magazine and the report of the police or against whom the FIR been filed. The courts are not deciding, in my considered opinion, that on the basis of the evidence, they would only pick out some lines in aid of them to decide it in favor of the victim. In 99% of the cases, the courts are finding negligence on the side of the offending vehicle in favor of the victim. Why we have to toil our head for finding out, going into the question of negligence, I don't understand. It is only for apportionment of compensation. As also you all know that Swaran Singh's case, the Supreme Court has said, if there is a complex questions of fact, it could be referred to the civil court. The court has to first provide the compensation to the victim. It is a headache of the two offending vehicles to fight out how it is to be apportioned. And the victim could collect the compensation from any one of the two persons. It is like proceeding against the guarantor as well as the principal debtor. So there also here, now I think it is high time that we have to give up negligence. Because in Workman Compensation Act, the compensation is provided without negligence. Here there is a concept of insurance. So for instance, for natural death, insurance is being given. The insurance company cannot deny for any circumstance. So because all vehicles to take insurance for causing any harm to any person, either by the negligence or by the negligence of the other person, to provide compensation. So if every vehicle have to take care in insuring the vehicles for which they pay. So all of us join in together because we always bound to commit mistakes while crossing the road or anything. So for which you have to get a compensation. So all of us join together, pooling our money and paying the victims of compensation. We need motor vehicles. Motor vehicles are causing accidents. So every other victim of motor vehicles accident must get compensation. We need not break our heads on the question of negligence. That is what 163A comes. The scope of 163A to be expanded further, because 40,000 rupees per year is a very, very low income. So it also has to be expanded. And in the case of injury, in my submission, even under 163A, sky is the limit. If you take the second part of 163A. But anyway, this is for the law, because anyway, the new amendment, they have given a go by. I do not know what will happen in that cases. It is for Mr. Srinivasan could explain more. So these are all the four things which I would like to advance. The law has to proceed further as far as motor accident claims are concerned. First, we can reduce the court time by by dispensing with the evidence and deciding the cases on affidavits. And court has to be particular about, because investigating officer's duty to record the driving license as well as the insurance the certificate in the first information report itself, and to take the copies of those documents and forward it to the insurance company and to the tribunal if required, or the insurance or that official to be prosecuted. So it will solve so many other issues. And secondly, about the contingency contracts, where we have to legalize the contingency contract for the benefit of both the claimants as well as for the dignity of the advocates, so that every advocate could bring their work within the four corners of law. They need not carry the tag of advocate committing misconduct, at least in their mind. Thirdly, with reference to the insurance to be made financial year basis, and certain duties to be cast upon the insurance company as well as to the government authorities. And in case of failure in their duty, either the insurance company or the authority to be made liable to pay the compensation that would be fixed in other cases, not like Solatium and all. So government could pay the compensation. Government can recover because so many people will not renew their license. They can any number of any amount they can fix as a fine. They could collect it. They can immediately seize it. They can bring the vehicle for sale, and they could do though. and the government could generate a lot of funds. From that funds, it could pay the compensation to the victims. And lastly, about the payment of compensation without the question of negligence. So this is these are all the things which I propose the law has to develop. And I would be so happy that if any of you would give a feedback on this, and the imperfections in my propositions. And I'm so thankful, because I must say, Mr. Srinivas Raghavan is doing a very, very great job in organizing. I think I must thank Ms. Hemalatha also, because what had happened during lockdown, I took 2 trips to my family is in Chennai. I took 2 trips to Chennai alone driving. On the first trip, when I went to, I was driving to Chennai. Ilayaraja was my company. But on the other 3 trips, while coming back from Chennai, and on the second trip, all these law lectures accompanied, because Justice Anant Venkatesh accompanied me, and another senior counsel on the Prevention of Corruption Act, because I took interest in criminal matters, because I was not very much accustomed to criminal matters. I learned a lot. I must state that every day, through the entire journey, I was playing these videos in the sense I was hearing the audio, and I learned a lot of things. So this is this will be so helpful, because I was telling my wife also, because in those days we had to depend only on law lectures in our college. Nowadays, if you open on YouTube, you can find lectures on all subjects of law. So I am so happy that I have contributed and to a little bit, and for the great opportunity, I thank my learned friend Mr. Srinivasan, and also Ms. Hemalatha, and who have been associated with the SSR Law Office webinars, and to the audience also. I am so thankful that you have heard me. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. To be frank with you, the online feedback would be the session was very insightful, because you were able to throw much insight on the more so-called debatable areas or gray areas, where I would admit that the courts are not giving serious consideration. For example, as you said, Rule 14 to 17 of the Tamil Nadu MEACT rules is very clear about the mode of evidence, and no tribunal follows this. And as you said, it's an agreement, and without production of the agreement, or without a party being examined as a witness, by just seeing the document called FIR or a policy, the court can easily come to a conclusion. Can go for expert, as the rule provides for clarification in case of any request. But unfortunately, I think your lecture will be able to give much more insight for the tribunals. I would suggest this video after it being sent to Judicial Academy. Negligence is something which is bothering the tribunals, and most of the cases are fought on the without any requirement doing so, and on par with the WC Act. Yeah, of course. So these 2 suggestions are very much insightful. And the other 2, one is pending before the court regarding longevity of the policy duration, that is pending before the Supreme Court. We hope we'll get a good judgment. And well, only in Supreme Court we are getting ultimate redressal for the accident victims. Yes. Of course, if it is legalized, both are safe. Both the claimants are safe. There is no exploitation, and the advocates are also safe, because after the practice of giving checks to the parties, direct payment to the bank, now advocates are on the receiving end from the clients in some cases.
Yes.
So I would say all the 4
they are losing their dignity in going behind the clients up to the bank. Unless they send someone to the bank along the client, they would not get a single pay.
Very
the client should fly away from the bank.
Exactly. And now they started collecting the, I think, ATM cards and the debit card also. So they invent a new device. That's the new device they hope on. So everything is writing on the wall. So I would rather say that all the 4 suggestions you have made are very much pertinent, relevant, and useful. Hope the authorities concerned, whether they are judicial officers or the government, will take note of it. And ultimately, your suggestions are taken note and implemented. That will be a good day for the litigants and the counsels. So one person has asked Mr. Abhinesh Murugesan about limitation. As of now, I think you said already there is no limitation today in filing claim petition. Am I right?
Yes.
So unless the new act comes into force, there is no limitation.
Yes.
And your friend Mr. Raghavan asked me, what is the compensation paid to the victim in the road accident of that actor Salman Khan? Any idea? a payment
At that time,
jeweler.
I only knew at that time I was in Bombay. Actually, the accident took place very near to my house, opposite to my daughter's school.
Oh,
I
oh,
saw
oh,
that car also standing before my office because the police station was nearby, that gone
oh,
based. But at that time, they filed a quash petition. Justice A.
okay.
P. Shah, while hearing the quash petition, saw to it that even for entertaining the petition, the victims to be paid some amount as compensation.
Oh,
That was
but we are
paid.
not, but we are not sure of what was the total compensation paid.
That I didn't know.
Oh, no idea.
Because I knew
And
that at the time of entertaining the quash petition, the amount was paid.
okay, okay, okay. Then one more question.
The
These
victims, you are
victims
saying
of
that
accident.
victims of the car belong to Salman Khan.
Exactly, exactly, same one.
Yes, 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 yes,
He
yes, yes. That's a foreign car, and the car
yeah.
gone waste.
Next question by Mr. Raghavan is victims of accident get more compensation from insurance company if IT returns are filed promptly?
Okay.
If IT returns are filed promptly, can
Yes,
they get more
yes.
compensation?
Sure. Nowadays, income tax assessed in the sense because if you say that you are having an income over and above the income tax limit, necessarily the court will insist you to produce IT returns. Or we would raise a question as to take an adverse inference.
And this session that strikes and there is an encomium to you by Mr. Mayappan. And one Abhinesh asked, as per new section 2019, the limitation is 6 months. Mr. Abhinesh, the new act is not been implemented regarding third party adjudication. So as of now, the old act only continues to apply. Probably you can clarify that the new act regarding third party adjudication has been not been notified
Yes,
so far.
yes. Yes, yes.
So,
Though substantial amendment being made in the Motor Vehicle Act, the amendment would come into force only after notification. The government has issued a notification where only few of the amendments were enforced, particularly the amendments with reference to the chapters dealing with the third-party claims have not yet been notified. Because that is a sea change if you see that amendments. So I think that government would, because the government would be consulting with the other all stakeholders to find out the after effects of the amendments, because it would change the policy structure, everything, because it brings a change in the payment of compensation and all. So insurance companies have to do a lot of research in determining their premium. And we'll also have to see, because they may raise the premium, and we may also, because now all the victims of compensation to be paid. So they may raise the premium, and we have to, and there's a cap is there.
yeah, there's a cap.
And this, yes, the limitation was there in the 1939 Act, it was 6 months. But however, the parties are given the liberty to file an application to condone the delay. Now, and thereafter 1988 Act, actually it's a laudable change to take up because to remove the entire limitation. Now the advocates are there everywhere. You can see the presence of advocates. They'll see to it that all the applications will be filed within 6 months.
Nothing is escaped. No accident is escaped.
It was not so attractive. Amount of compensation was very slow. Actually, only Tamil Nadu took a great strides in granting reasonable compensation. Our judges, we have seen even in the previous. I'm not even referring to Justice Kirubagaran, because because if you see the ACJ, if you read all the judgments, even in Bombay they would be providing very meager compensation. And we have seen in many cases Supreme Court is giving very meager, and our judges like Manikumar and all very generous in providing compensation. Justice Sadashiv Munda. So we took great strides in providing reasonable compensation. And anyway, that's what now I don't think, because as I said, if you don't have these, because people are coming even for civil litigation after 3 years. If advocates are getting a pile, definitely they would approach the client and ask the client to file a complaint, file a petition. So where the ambulance chasers are helpful, that is another instance I can point out.
Even in case of negligence liability, I think Tamil Nadu High Court, Madras High Court is a forerunner in interpreting the particular terms in favor of the claimants. And
there's multiplier and all.
And when Mr. Ashok Kumar, Advocate Shributtur, wants a question: what is the multiplier for an unborn child who died in the womb of the mother?
Yeah. All these things I have to only have without my junior said I cannot answer.
Minimum is 15, so that can be obtained. 0 to 15, up to 15 years, 15.
In those days, I would always credit Justice Tamilvanan. At that time, Justice Raju's judgment was there. For bachelors, not more than at the worst, it should be 10. It cannot be more than 10. Actually, it was a passing reference that was judiciously followed. Then Justice Tamilvanan questioned. See, under multiplier, even for an unborn child or for even for a child, you are saying 15. Then why are you saying for bachelor 10?
That's right. That's a good question. So there are other comments or encomiums about the lecture by our classmates, juniors, and the session seems to be very interesting. Sukanya Asitabi say, true, more EPs are pending against Transport Corporation only, and a good show. And I would rather thank Mr. Prabhu for the meaningful session. Thank you for the insightful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.